buckle up, because today's deep dive takes us into unsolved mystery, the chilling, the Zodiac Killer. You've provided us with excerpts from, the Zodiac Killer Wikipedia page, and let me tell you, a lot to unpack. We're talking cryptic messages, confirmed murders, and a trail of terror that gripped California in the late 1960s. And trust me, the details are as fascinating as they are disturbing.
I believe that.
Luckily, expert speaker is here with us today to help make sense of it all. So what are we going to focus on today with all this information?
Well, we're going to follow the facts as we know them, starting with those confirmed victims, the details of the attacks, the strange symbols, those letters to the press. It's all part of a puzzle we're going to try to piece together.
Yeah.
You're right. The way this killer combined seemingly random violence with this very deliberate campaign of fear is truly fascinating.
Okay, let's unpack this. The case kicks off in December 1968 with the Lake Herman Road murders. Teenage couple, David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen, shot in their car. They were parked on a lover's lane. It's an image that instantly sets the stage for this dark, unsettling story.
It's a detail that really feeds into the public imagination. The idea of young love being cut so tragically short, the isolation of a lover's lane, that sudden and brutal violence, it all just adds to this sense of dread that surrounds this case.
And the Zodiac, if that IS who was responsible, doesn't let up. Just a few months later, July 4th, 1969, we have the attack at Blue Rock Springs Park.
Another couple, Michael Mageau and Darlene Ferrin, are attacked in a parked car. But this time, there's a chilling twist. Michael Mageau survives.
Which gives us a witness and a terrifying new layer to the story.
Exactly. We now have someone who came face-to-face with the Zodiac and lived to tell the tale. Mageau's account of the attack, that description of the killer, the chilling detail of the Zodiac calling the police moments later, seemingly to claim responsibility, it sent shockwaves through the community and set the stage for the media frenzy to come.
It's like something out of a horror movie. The killer calling the police, almost bragging.
And it gets worse. The next attack, Lake Berryessa, September 27th, 1969, is where we see a truly disturbing escalation. The victims, Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard, they're picnicking when they're approached by this man. He's wearing this bizarre, almost ceremonial-looking hood. He binds them, stabs them repeatedly, and this time he leaves a message.
This isn't just about killing anymore, it's about sending a message.
Absolutely. He leaves this chilling message on Hartnell's car door, a cryptic symbol, and the dates of the previous attacks. It's as if he's marking his territory, announcing to the world, I am here, I am in control.
And tragically, Cecilia Shepard doesn't survive this attack. The brutality, the symbolism, the deliberate taunting of the police, it's all so carefully orchestrated to instill maximum terror. It's like he's creating this macabre spectacle.
The case takes on this new urgency for investigators. This isn't just a random series of crimes anymore. They're dealing with a serial offender who is growing bolder, more brazen with each attack. The pressure is on to catch him, but the Zodiac, true to his name, seems to vanish into thin air.
But then on October 11th, 1969, just a few weeks later, he strikes again, this time in the heart of San Francisco. Paul Stein, a San Francisco cab driver, becomes the Zodiac's final confirmed victim. What makes this attack so different, so important to understanding the case?
It's the first and only murder attributed to the Zodiac that took place outside of the Bay Area, extending his reach and further stoking that public fear. But there's another crucial detail that sets this attack apart: witnesses. Several people saw the killer fleeing the scene.
Witnesses, that's huge. This is what investigators have been waiting for, right?
Absolutely. And those witness accounts led to the creation of one of the most infamous police sketches in criminal history. The image of that man with his glasses and crew cut became seared into the public's imagination. Finally, there was a face to connect to these horrific acts.
It feels like the case should break wide open right here.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But this is the Zodiac we're talking about. And the story is far from over. He seemed to vanish, but not before leaving behind another chilling calling card, his cryptograms and letters to the press. This is where the Zodiac truly steps out of the shadows and into infamy.
Right. The letters and ciphers almost become as terrifying as the murders themselves. It's like he's toying with the police, the public, turning this whole investigation into this twisted game.
Exactly. The Zodiac, he wasn't content with simply committing murders. This is a man who craved notoriety. He wanted to play cat and mouse with the authorities, and he used the media to do it.
And he was good at it.
Yeah.
Sending those cryptic messages to newspapers, taunting the police, even signing them with his eerie symbol. It's like he got off on the attention.
Playing the role of puppet master, The most famous of these ciphers, the Z408, it was sent to several newspapers just a few weeks after Paul Stein's murder.
And unbelievably, it was cracked by a couple from Salinas. Not even by, professional code breakers. Imagine sitting at your kitchen table and suddenly realizing you've cracked the code of a serial killer.
It's a chilling thought. And the message itself, it wasn't any less unsettling. It was full of misspellings, these disturbing boasts, even referencing the most dangerous game. You know that short story where this wealthy hunter hunts humans on a secluded island?
He actually said he was hunting people.
He did. He talked about collecting slaves for the afterlife. He seemed to, like, revel in the idea that he held all the cards.
This is where my blood runs cold. This isn't just some, guy committing crimes. This is someone claiming to be playing God with people's lives.
And just as unsettling is the unsolved Z32 cipher. Sent a few weeks after the Z408, this one accompanied by a map, Mount Diablo.
What are some of the theories surrounding this one? What was he trying to tell us?
That particular cipher, it's baffled experts for decades. Some believe it points to the location of another buried bomb, or perhaps like a hidden message within the landscape itself. The Zodiac was known to be a fan of riddles and puzzles, so it's possible this was just another way for him to exert his power, his control over the situation.
This is what makes this case so fascinating and frustrating, right? The layers upon layers of mystery. Like, we can solve some of these puzzles, but the answers just lead to more questions.
You know, unsolved ciphers, they're like open wounds, constantly reminding us that we may never know the full truth, but then, just when you think the trail has gone cold, you've got the Z340.
The Z340 unsolved for over 50 years finally cracked in 2020. That must have sent, like, shockwaves through the true crime community. What did it reveal after all those years?
Sadly, not much to help with identifying the killer. It seems our mysterious cipher solver was right to be cautious. The Zodiac, he taunted the police again. He denied being a man who had called into a TV show claiming to be him, and reiterated his delusions of grandeur about this afterlife filled with slaves.
It's like this twisted game of cat and mouse, with the Zodiac always seeming to be one step ahead.
He seemed to, like, disappear and reappear at will, keeping the public, the authorities, on edge, never knowing when or where he might strike next. And then, to further taunt the people trying to catch him, there's that chilling Halloween card sent to Chronicle reporter Paul Avery.
Right. Avery, who was relentless in his pursuit of the Zodiac, he became a target just for doing his job.
Absolutely. Avery was like a dog with a bone when it came to the Zodiac case, and the killer took notice. That Halloween card with its peekaboo, you are doomed message, it was a chillingly personal threat, showing the Zodiac's willingness to target anyone who dared to get too close.
And remember, this is just the confirmed murders. The story takes an even darker turn when we start to consider the possibility of even more victims.
That's right. The Zodiac claimed to have killed 37 people, but only 7 attacks were ever officially linked to him. This has led investigators and amateur sleuths down countless rabbit holes over the years, trying to separate fact from fiction, determine the true extent of his crimes.
So we're really only seeing the tip of the iceberg? That's terrifying. Are we going to talk about some of those suspected victims next?
We are. Each suspected case adds another layer of complexity and asks a chilling question. How far back does this trail of terror really go? Let's unpack some of these unsettling possible connections. We can start with a case that predates the confirmed Zodiac killings. It's a case that has sparked, endless debate. The murder of Cherry Jo Bates in Riverside, California in 1966.
A case that predates the known Zodiac timeline. That's interesting, especially since, his confirmed spree was so geographically centered, around the Bay Area. What are the potential links?
Well, about 6 weeks after Bates was brutally murdered near the Riverside Library, a handwritten letter claiming responsibility. It was sent to the police and a local newspaper.
Okay, so someone claiming to be the killer reached out to the press. That does sound familiar.
And the language used in the letter, full of these cryptic threats, these boasts, it was eerily similar to the Zodiac's later communications. And what's even more unsettling is this chilling poem found carved into a desk at Bates College Library, bearing these striking similarities to the Zodiac's writing style.
So we've got location, a possible letter to the press, and similar writing styles. No wonder investigators were interested.
Right. Some investigators, they believe that the Zodiac, he was mimicking the Bates case, trying to claim credit for a crime that he didn't commit. But others, they see it as a potential starting point, this chilling prologue to the terror he would later unleash on the Bay Area. Adding another layer of intrigue, a man's wristwatch was found near Bates' body. It had been, purposefully broken. And while we didn't have the forensic technology back then that we do today, it's the kind of detail that makes you wonder, right? Could it have belonged to the killer? It's like another piece of the puzzle we might be able to connect now.
It's like the mystery deepens with every new detail. What about that possible San Diego connection you mentioned? Fill me in on that one?
Some researchers suggest that the Zodiac may have been active even earlier, possibly as far back as 1962, citing this chilling phone call to the Oceanside police a day before a cab driver is murdered. The caller, they say, practically dared them to solve the crime.
Another possible cab driver victim. And taunting the police. It does sound like our guy.
And if you delve into the details of the 1964 Ocean Beach murders, the similarities to the Zodiac's MO, they're even more pronounced. Newlywed couple Johnny Ray and Joyce Ann Swindle gunned down on their honeymoon while walking along the beach.
It's heartbreaking and eerily familiar. Another couple, another seemingly random attack, and that detail that you mentioned earlier, the type of rifle used in the Swindle murders, it's the same as the one linked to the Lake Herman Road killings.
Exactly. But here's the thing. Despite the similarities in the Oceanside and Ocean Beach cases, there's no hard evidence definitively linking the Zodiac to these earlier crimes.
So we're left with more questions than answers. It's like every time we think we might be getting closer to the truth, we hit another dead end. It makes you wonder just how many lives this killer might have actually taken. How many families are still searching for answers? And then, adding fuel to the fire, there's the disappearance of Donna Lass in 1970.
Donna Lass, she vanished without a trace from South Lake Tahoe. A few months later, that postcard was sent to Paul Avery at the Chronicle with a collage of images from Lake Tahoe and the cryptic message, "Peek through the pines."
So was the Zodiac claiming responsibility for her disappearance too?
It was never proven. There was speculation at the time that Lass might have been a victim of those, the so-called Lake Tahoe murders, a series of unsolved disappearances and murders that had plagued the region. The postcard, with its eerie message and connection to Lake Tahoe, it seemed to fit into that narrative. But just like the others, it's a case where we just don't have the evidence to say for sure.
So many potential victims, so many what-ifs. It's almost as if the Zodiac wanted to create this atmosphere of paranoia, the sense that he could be anywhere at any time.
Exactly. He was this master manipulator, this puppeteer pulling at the strings of fear and uncertainty. He wanted us to see his handiwork everywhere we looked, to question every shadow, every unanswered phone call.
And it worked. Decades later, we're still talking about him, still trying to connect the dots. It makes you wonder, what would the Zodiac think about all this attention, all these years later?
Perhaps this was his ultimate goal all along, to embed himself so deeply into our collective psyche that his legend, it would live on forever. And in that sense, he succeeded. The Zodiac Killer remains an enigma, this chilling reminder that even in an age of advanced technology, forensic science, some cases, they refuse to be solved. Some monsters, they remain hidden in the shadows.
And that's our deep dive into the perplexing case of the Zodiac Killer. We've explored the murders, the ciphers, the suspects, and the haunting possibility of even more victims, a terrifying web spun by a killer who's become a part of, like, American folklore. But here's something to ponder. With so many potential victims and a killer seemingly obsessed with games and puzzles, could there be a hidden message, a vital clue lurking within the case itself? Maybe the key to unraveling this mystery, it lies not in finding new evidence, but in deciphering the patterns already laid out before us.